Welcome to the Beautiful Game Plan podcast, produced by Focus Shift Films and sponsored by Welsh sports fans. I'm your host, Daniel J. Harris. I'm a filmmaker and entrepreneur working across sport, and I'm a huge fan of sports content. This podcast is my chance to meet amazing people who are doing amazing things in the sports content space and to share their stories with you in the hope that it inspires ideas. The amazing Joe Towns, senior lecturer at Cardiff Met Uni and a sports TV producer. Joe, welcome to the Beautiful Game Plan podcast. You're all across sports TV these days, from Welsh football to the Olympics, and your graduates are all making their way through the industry as well now. So where did it all start for you in terms of working in sport?
Well, I love sport. I love watching sport. And I remember watching programmes like Grandstand when I was younger on a Saturday afternoon after playing football or after going to watch the Swans down the Vetch. So you've got to have a love for sport, but then you've got to be a bit of a blagger. So I would write match reports for the South Wales Evening Post about basketball games that I'd played in and say that I'd scored 25 points or something. But I had a relationship with the South Wales Evening Post, went to university in Loughborough, had a mate that was living near Wimbledon tennis, and he got us in as court coverers. Again, my advice I always tell the students and any young people trying to get in is get as near to the event as you can. So spot those massive events in the calendar and get yourself there. So we get into Wimbledon. We're all working as court coverers. It's the year 2000. I was just finishing university and I desperately wanted to go to the Sydney Olympics, 2000 Sydney Olympics. So I begged the South Wales Evening Post. I said, can you give me a press pass? And they said, well, maybe, but we're not flying you out there. And I said, yeah, I'm going to be there anyway. I'm going backpacking. They said, we're not doing your accommodation. I said, no, don't worry, I'll be in a hostel. Just give me a press pass. And so I had a South Wales Evening Post press pass to cover the Sydney 2000 Olympics just after I graduated. And during Wimbledon that summer, working as a court coverer, I put my CV in every single pigeonhole at the press office. I couldn't get into the media centre, but I could get to the press room. And I put my CV in 60 different pigeonholes. I only got one reply from an amazing guy called Alan Wilkins, who was a brilliant broadcaster in Wales in the 90s, moved to Singapore, and is really famous in India because he covers cricket and tennis and golf. And yeah, he replied to me and gave me some contacts. So after I did the Olympics, and I say did the Olympics, I was there with a press pass, but the Evening Post were only taking one report from me every couple of days. So I had time to go to all the events, time to hang around in the press centre, go to different press trips around Sydney Harbour. I met someone at the Olympics who gave me a job as a runner at Eurosport covering the Australian Open tennis in Melbourne, early 2001. So again, it's something else I say to the students, everything leads to something. So you just got to roll the dice a little bit. You've got to buy a ticket. You've got to get yourself there. So I worked at the Oz Open, met someone there from Sky Sports, and then Sky Sports were coming to Australia that summer to do the British Lions. And I'm a rugby fan as well as a football fan. And I actually couldn't get a gig with Sky as a runner on the Lions. I got in touch with them, told them I'm in Australia, keen to do anything. So in the end, a bunch of us went as fans, as punters. We went to every Lions match, but I would always go and find the TV truck at the back of the stadium, bang on the door and say, hi, let me know if there's anything you need. I'm around, for the next 3 or 4 weeks while you're here. So I finally got a number off one of them. And when I got back from Australia, September 2001, the producer of Sky Sports Darts got in touch and said, I've heard you want to be a runner. And I got up and I joined the darts team back when the World PDC Darts was in Circus Tavern in Purfleet in Essex. Before it's the amazing sort of phenomenon it is now. And yeah, at Sky, you work as a runner for a year, you make tea. I worked as a runner on Soccer AM, across the tennis, across the golf, and then finally got a gig on the rugby team. And yeah, after 8 years there, became a rugby producer. I went to the British Lions tour of New Zealand in 2005. Yeah, and so working at Sky was an absolute dream for someone like me.
Fantastic. And you haven't waited for anybody to kind of come and find you and give you an opportunity. You've created those opportunities yourself, haven't you? Kind of similar to myself as well. Euro 2016 with a football. It's like, I'm going, I'm watching it. I'm going to take a camera. I'm going to create content, and then I'll see who wants it. And Wales Online were interested in taking that content. So I was filming myself, walking around France, talking to the camera, capturing some things, sending it across to them. They were getting content for free, so they were super happy. They were putting it out, and then some of the video content was getting like up to 500,000 views, and it was kind of like, right, there we go. I'm now making sports content. I'm now in the world of sports content, and you create that opportunity for yourself, don't you? And then you're visible, and then people are going, "Hey, I saw what you did. I've got this coming up. Do you fancy getting involved?" It sounds like you've had a very similar journey to myself from that sense.
Totally, and it's the sporting calendar is all laid out for us. We know there's going to be a Rugby World Cup in England next year for the women. We know there's going to be a Football World Cup in America. We know there's going to be an Olympics in LA in 2028. So you can start to say, right, I need to be at that event. And if you can't get a proper job there, you might work as a court coverer like I did at Wimbledon as part of the ground staff, or you might do what you did. Yeah, just get out there and make fan content.
Yeah, that's it. The content you can create, you can see the sports. You can, even if you don't get to the event, you can watch it on the telly. You can create your own coverage of it. It's so accessible now. And just before we started recording, we were talking that there's so much sport. There's so many different sports, so many different levels of sport, men's, women's, youth. There's so much out there. And if you can find something that maybe isn't getting the coverage and go and create that coverage yourself, you create a little bit of a niche. Nobody else is doing it. I'll go and do it. And all of a sudden you become a bit more visible. And I think that's a great opportunity for students. They're looking and going, right, there's 100 people covering that. There's nobody covering that over there. I can go and do something there, and I can create a little something, a little niche, create something that nobody else is using. And then some broadcaster or platform might go, oh, that's great. We wanted to cover that. We didn't have the budget for it. Could we use your content? All of a sudden, your content has landed on a platform and there's eyeballs on it.
Yeah, you've got to be alert to those opportunities. You've got to be really curious about what those opportunities are. And I was saying to my students maybe 5-6 years ago, it's women's football now. That's got all the growth potential. Men's football is as big as it's ever going to be. But women's football, that's going to get bigger and bigger. So if you can become the women's football person, or if there's an Olympics in 4 years, can you become the athletics person, or pick some of those niche sports like you mentioned, like hockey and netball? So yeah, or even if new formats of cricket come along, the 100 cricket, and that becomes your sport. You have to have, it can't just be football. You need that other sport that you're really interested in, and people start recognizing that you're the expert. You've got the contacts, you've got the network.
That's it. You become a key person of influence, as Daniel Priestley talks about in his books. Do you mean you kind of carve out your own little niche? You create opportunities for yourself. And yeah, I think it's being aware of the broader landscape. It's like in Wales, if you want to cover men's football or men's rugby, you're one of 50 people. Do you know what I mean? They're in the press room trying to cover it. Whereas if you look at things like the fastest growing sport in Wales for under 18s, according to the Sport Wales survey, is basketball. So it's like, okay, that's fast growing. There's the potential there for this to be something big in the future. But at the moment, they need help with creating stories, creating content, creating visibility. You can kind of put your hand up, go and help out over there. And then as that grows, you grow with it then, and then you get more opportunities.
Totally, and I think it's looking for those new sports, whether it's UFC or esports, or looking at the new Olympic sports like surfing and BMX and climbing. Those are the ones that the BBC are going to have to cover in 5 years. Those old reporters at the BBC, as good as they are, don't know anything about those sports. So that'll become your point of difference when you're applying for a job.
That's it. And you stand apart from the crowd then, don't you? And you keep saying you've kind of carved your niche, and then opportunities will come your way. So yeah, you started off at Sky then, and then after a few years at Sky, you moved across to the BBC. So kind of what sort of things were you covering there? And I imagine Sky and BBC being quite different places to work in those days.
Yeah, Sky in the early 2000s was sort of brash, glamorous, confident, vibrant, really young, really dynamic. You each had an Amex expenses card, thanks to Rupert Murdoch, and you could just rinse it wherever you went. You didn't get paid that well, but you got looked after. So you flew first class, you stayed in 5-star hotels, and you had this Amex card to take out the talent. They were all about looking after the talent, and the production staff would need to make sure the talent had what they wanted. BBC, totally different. You couldn't spend on an Amex card like that. But you had these amazing blue ribbon events that were still part of the BBC broadcast portfolio. So you had the Olympics. I did the 2012 Olympics in London, and that was just possibly the best event I've ever been part of, just because of the energy and the positivity and the momentum. I was part of this creative team at BBC Sport, and I'd worked with them on all the network events like Wimbledon, like the Six Nations. Went to Rio 2016, again, had 5 weeks in a hotel on the beach in Rio. So there's certain things with the BBC where you get this real high level of sport and you know that there are millions watching back home. Whereas sometimes you do things at Sky Sports, you put a lot of effort into something, but there might only be 50,000 people watching it. So it was nice to know at BBC that certain things you made were going out to sort of, 10, 12 million people.
Yeah, there's a certain prestige with working at the BBC, isn't it? Like, I worked there for a little while at BBC Wales, and I found it a frustrating place sometimes because there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of red tape, there's a lot of consideration around some of the smaller things, like you're making social media content. Have you used the correct red, the BBC Wales red? Should this word be hyphenated in the transcriptions on the bottom of the video? You kind of get bogged down in process a little bit there. Whereas, it sounds like the early days of Sky was just like, let's just go and create cool stuff. Let's go wild. And sometimes that doesn't translate into viewing figures. But for someone who's carving their path in the industry and kind of making their way, I think I hear from a lot of people, there was a lot of opportunities to do cool stuff, to push the boundaries and to kind of test yourself a little bit there.
But you have got to push regardless. BBC is as brilliant as it is frustrating. And it is, like you say, all those different departments, sometimes all covering the same thing or lots of little silos. But there are amazing opportunities at BBC. But sometimes you've got to, be a disruptor like you are. You've got to break the rules a little bit. I remember really not getting on with the person who was in charge of digital at BBC Sport Wales when I was there, because I wanted to launch a Twitter page and an Instagram page for Scrum 5. I was running Scrum 5, but I knew there were these new platforms. This is 2009, 2010, 2011. And she said, no, you can't have an Instagram page. And I just set it up anyway. And before long,
that's madness.
We had 150,000 followers before long, and they've still got that now, and they use that. I don't have the password anymore. And it was the same for Twitter as it was then. I even set up remember Vine? Vine was like a precursor to TikTok. But if there's someone at the BBC who's is a bit of an obstacle, sometimes you just got to push on and do it. If you know deep down that this is where the audience is, this is the new platform, you've just got to sometimes ask for forgiveness, not permission. So that's my advice as well. Break some rules.
Yeah, I say it's kind of it's a kind of risk averse sort of strategy with the BBC, isn't it? It's like they wouldn't dive onto TikTok or Twitter or anything straight away. It's like, okay, let's just get it hands out and then we won't join it.
I do get it. They've been burnt over the years, and they have to be careful, and they come under real scrutiny and criticism if they make the smallest mistake. Yeah. So there is reasons why sometimes the management are so conservative and cautious. But wherever you are, you've got to be aware if there's a new platform and you need to be on it, because increasingly we've got to take our content wherever we're working, whoever we're working for. We've got to put our content where the audience is. Yeah, they're not. It used to be the BBC was the only show in town, and the audience would come to us. Sky Sports was different. It's subscription, and people pay to come to it. But now, increasingly, if you've got a good bit of content, you've got to figure out how to get it in front of the most eyeballs as possible, and that's the challenge,
Exactly, and that's it. It all comes down to audience, because you can make the best content in the world, but if there's nobody that wants to watch it, or it's on a platform and no one's going to see it, it's a bit of a waste of time and energy, isn't it? You want to go, right, who are my audience? Where are they? What do they want? And how can I give them content in a way that surprises them? And that creates that engagement then. And that's why, like we talked about, it's good for a student to go, well, there's an audience for basketball over here, but there's nobody making content for them. But where are they? Are they on Twitter? Are they on TikTok? Are they on YouTube? Where are they? If you just go, I'm making them put it out there and I hope they find it, then you're not gonna find success.
Yeah, they say a lot of content is king, and it's just, we want our students here and young people that you work with to understand that they're digital storytellers, and they've got to find a story, but then think what style suits it best. And they might do something entirely different on TikTok, and it might be a much shorter duration. It might be shot vertical, totally different if they're making something for the BBC News or they're making something for YouTube. But I saw something the other day that people, they come for the short form content. That's where you grab them, but they stay for the long form.
Yeah.
So there's still a real importance that you can do longer form storytelling, and that's what will hold your audiences long term. But short term, you've got to grab them with brilliant short form content, and that isn't easy in a crowded marketplace. But I definitely think younger people are much better at that type of content because they've grown up with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a bit of a misconception, isn't there, that young people are only watching short form content. They're not interested in long form, but they've got lots of short form content easily accessible on their phones and they're watching that. And if you can get them engaged, there's something in that short form content. They would go, I'm interested. I like this character. I like this story. I like this world. I want to find out more. And you would make it easy for them to find more. They'll come and watch the longer form content. So your short content is your gateway, isn't it? It's your
Absolutely.
your front of house sort of thing.
I don't buy into this thing that younger people have got shorter attention spans. I think they've got more advanced attention spans, so they can actually be across 2 or 3 screens. They can be listening to a podcast. They can be editing something here. They can be watching another bit of video here, and that would blow the brains of our grandparents. 2 or 3 different types of stimuli coming in would fry them. But actually, younger people can be doing more things at once, and they can make decisions quicker. So generations before us might watch the TV and think, okay, I'll see what it's like. I'll give it a chance. Younger people are literally, it's 1 or 2 seconds. They can say, that's boring. That's not for me. Wrong graphics. Don't like the way it's shot. Don't like the first shot. It's a talking head. I'm not interested, So they're finding different, exciting ways to tell stories. Generations above us, it's still sticking with the same style, all of it needs reimagining constantly.
Yeah, and I think like for people of our generation and older, you grew up with like 4 TV channels. So you flick through the 4 channels and you can't find anything you like. You either sit and stare at the wall or you read a book or you just watch something you're not that interested in. Whereas young people have got so much content available to them. If they don't like that, they'll go to that. If they don't like that, they'll go to that because they know they'll find something they like. Whereas, do you know what I mean, 35 and above sort of age people, they used to go in, no, no, no. This is probably the best of the 4. I'll sit with this for an hour and hopefully something better will come on. Yeah. Kids don't need to do that. Gone. Right, I like that. That's what I'm going to watch. So you've got to give them something from the off.
Yeah, I feel like with our students as well, we try and put a lot of content that we want them to look at in a YouTube space because that's where they're going to be. They don't want to stand in front of a lecturer with a PowerPoint slides. So it's about us going to them. And us meeting them in the middle. And I'm always finding stuff out from my students of things they watch on YouTube that I didn't know existed. And then I watch it and the storytelling's incredible and it's filmed beautifully and the editing's amazing. Editing's different. All the things I learned at BBC, I'm having to unlearn, the establishing shot or the slower pace or the transitions. They are jump cutting through everything. They're breaking all the rules. It's exciting. And it's a new way of visual storytelling. So you either get with it or you can't really.
Yeah, well, I'm 40 years old and I finished an edit yesterday and it was the first edit I ever put together with jump cuts in.
Yeah, welcome.
I don't feel completely comfortable with it, but audiences don't mind that. Whereas that was like
cardinal sin, wasn't it? That was a cardinal sin. It was an error.
Exactly. Yeah. You do not have a jump cut. Whereas now you watch something and they just jump through and you think, well, all those pauses, those breaths, those ums, those ahs have gone. So that minute is now condensed and they've got the same amount of information that you would have watching the minute, but they save themselves half the time.
We were teaching how to edit match highlights here. And I'm from a sort of BBC match of the day classic. There's a sort of gold standard of how a highlight should look. And you have cutaways of the coaches and the crowd and you have teams coming out. And they cut some highlights and they were cutting from camera 1 to camera 1, which again was an absolute no-no when I was at the BBC or at Sky. And I said, you can't do that. And then they got out their NFL or NBA Game Pass and said, look, 3-minute highlights straight after the game, cutting from camera 1 to camera 1, no transitions, no wipes, no cutaways to the crowd. And that was the NBA and the NFL. So it's us that have to sort of follow that style. And the reason they don't do the cutaways is because it takes too much time. They want to get that match edit out as soon as possible. As soon as that game is finished, it might even be edited by AI for all we know. But it's, a different audience, different style, different platform. And I guess you alter your editing accordingly.
Yeah, and it sounds like they're teaching you almost as much as you're teaching them. But
So
they're the new audience. They're the audience of the future. You can't say,
yeah,
no, that's wrong. This is what you do, because they go, well, I wouldn't watch that. I'm the
yeah,
audience. I know. And you've got to listen to them, haven't you?
absolutely. I learn more of my students, I think, than they learn of me. I get inspired by them probably more than I inspire them. So yeah, it's a two-way thing. And I think that's why our course works, because we're willing to listen to the students, but hopefully they're willing to listen to us, because most of the team I work with here work in the industry still.
Yeah, and I think that brings me on nicely to the next question. 2016, then you kind of left the BBC and you went across to Cardiff Met. You're now the program director of the Sports Broadcast MSc. So, what was it like moving into academia, and kind of how have you managed to build that award-winning course? I think we've talked about it a little bit, but yeah, just highlight some of those key elements.
Yeah, the good thing at Cardiff Met is that they use what's going on campus. So there was always sport here. There was always really high level sport here, Olympians, Paralympians, international rugby players, but they didn't tell their story very well. They were all sports scientists, sport coaches, doing a great job of what they did, all quite humble, so weren't that comfortable blowing their own trumpet. That's what we do. In broadcast, in sport, we're all about the hype. We're about amplifying the message. And I just couldn't believe the amount of stories when I got here. It was Professor Katie Thurloway, who's head of School of Sport. She recruited me from BBC. She had the idea for the course and said, look, we want to promote the great sport on campus, and we think it would make sense to have a course that does that. So we've got a postgrad in sports broadcasting and an undergrad that Steph Guerrero runs, of Socially Distant Sports Bar. Steph runs the undergrad sport media. But yeah, we use the sport all around this campus as a live laboratory. So if we are talking about press conferences, we invite some athletes in for a press conference. If we're talking about post-match interviews, we go down to a game and do a post-match interview. If we're talking about camera one coverage from a gantry, we go and do it. We live stream. If the market changes, so podcasting came out of nowhere. So we hired Steph, who was pretty much one of the top podcasters in Wales. We wanted to live stream more, so we hired a guy called Adrian Rapps from the Cardiff Devils ice hockey live stream. So all of our tech team and all of our teaching team are from industry. Sam Lloyd is a TV presenter who I grew up watching. She was doing the highlights of a football show on ITV 20 years ago. Now she's lecturing with us. Bryn Laura's lectured with us. So it's just brilliant to make sure the students are always getting information from people who know what they're talking about. Because without criticizing other courses, there are some great courses around the country, but the lecturers are 20 years out of the game, or they're from the print industry, which unfortunately isn't where the jobs are now. So it's really important, I think, that your lecturers on a course like this are as current as possible. And then the course itself is only as strong as the technicians, because the kit is changing all the time. There's a camera here that they'll probably have to replace, so we've got Blackmagic cameras, Sony cameras, Panasonic cameras, and I'm not that technical. I'm from an era where producers produced. That time has gone. I used to go on a shoot at the BBC and there'd be 6 of us: a sound engineer, 2 camera ops, a producer, a PA. Now you go and there's 2 of you max, but usually 1, and you are a shoot, edit, operator, and that's what the industry wants. That's the future. So we're trying to create, we say industry ready, but students who are comfortable in a broadcast truck, in a radio studio, comfortable on a 3-camera shoot, can edit that, fast turnaround, can do social media. And again, I mentioned podcasting, but that was an audio thing 5 years ago. It's now a video thing. A podcast doesn't really exist unless it's being filmed, and the top podcasts are being filmed multi-camera. And then people don't really hear about a podcast unless they see it on Instagram. So, half the podcasts I say I like, I probably only see the stuff on Instagram. I never get to the podcast. So, yeah, it's that market where podcasting is a good example of video, audio, social media, all converging.
Sponsored by Welsh sports fans and their award-winning Riverside Sports Bar, an American-style sports bar with a distinctly Welsh feel. Great food, great atmosphere, and all the sport, as well as a range of Welsh products at Wales' #1 sports bar.
this is a case in point, isn't it? Do you mean we're getting a lovely video here? It'll be across all the different audio platforms, but the promo content is video. So you're using video promos to get people across to listen to an audio product. And like we were talking again earlier, you have to be multi-skilled these days. You have to be able to shoot. You have to be able to edit. You have to be comfortable in a number of situations. And yeah, I interviewed Ian Rush when we did the Goal Rush kind of mini doc for Red Wall Plus, and I drove up to Chester and kind of met him. And I had two cameras, I had the mics, I had the lights, and it was just me. And I set it all up, and Ian Rush kind of walked in and went, Is it just you? And I'm like, yeah, just me, mate. No worries. Take a seat. And kind of, you've got to have those two cameras set up. You've got to know how to manage those things and listen to the audio and ask the questions and make sure the lighting's okay, because sometimes that's all the kind of time and the resource or the equipment you've got. You've got to be able to do it all in order to be able to deliver. And then multi-skilled people get more opportunities because obviously you can do more things across the industry.
Totally. In the BBC Wales office now, I keep an eye on what they do and what sort of opportunities our students might have there. But if you want to get on the trips, and let's face it, in sports broadcasting, the trips are the perks of the job. You know, you want to be at the World Cup when it's in California, and in Canada and Mexico. You want to be on those trips to Iceland the other night. The only people that get to go on those trips now can do more than one thing. They can report and commentate, or they can speak Welsh and English. They can shoot and edit. Some of them can do all of that stuff. They can set up. There's a guy they've got there called Tom Brown, who was at the Olympics, and he's going all around Paris with 3 or 4 cameras. He's doing stuff for social. He's doing live radio hits. He's live for Wales Today on the news. So if you do have those skills, you'll get the best opportunities. And we've got a new guy who used to work for you, actually, Greg Kane, who's graduate of ours from 5 years ago, just got into the BBC, and they're loving him there because he can film, because he can edit, because he can set up lights, because he's got a creative mindset, eye for a story. So it's just those are the ones who are getting the best gigs now.
Exactly. And over the years, I've worked with some phenomenal students and graduates from Cardiff Met. And one that comes to mind is Gabriella Dukes.
Oh.
She can edit. She can speak Welsh. She can speak English. She can present. She creates her own podcast. She can literally do anything. And she's good at all those things. So the opportunities naturally come because you're looking and thinking, well, she can do so many different roles and using so many.
Yeah, because it used to be you just send the reporter to ask the questions. But now it's so efficient and financially attractive to send someone who can do the interviews, film the interviews, come back, edit the interviews. And Gabriella's a really good example. She's working for 5 Live on the weekend at the highest level of sort of audio broadcasting. But a lot of those opportunities only come around on a Saturday. Commentary gigs only come around a few times a week. You've got to be able to earn money Monday to Thursday in sport. And so if you've got Gabriella's skill set where you can produce a podcast, make content for social, make Welsh language content. So all of the graduates of ours that have done the best are the ones who grasped that while they were here, that they need to film and edit, as well as maybe if they want to present, report, commentate. We're finding more and more students are going down the production route. And I often say to them that I used to produce the Six Nations matches at the Principality Stadium. We'd have 100 staff on the day, so a massive call sheet, but only 8 of them were on-air talent. A couple of reporters, a couple of commentators, a couple of pundits, and a presenter. The other 90% were all in production. So if you want to give yourself a 90% chance of getting a job, then you've got to be comfortable in production, filming, editing, making highlights, working on analysis, doing stuff for social. So it's just that understanding that's where the jobs are. And the students are now working for the clubs. So we've got a lad called Mackenzie just got a job at Swansea City. We've got graduates at Gloucester Rugby, Bath Rugby, Cardiff Rugby. They're working for the governing bodies. We've got a lad, Cameron, who's at Wales Boxing. Ethan Harris is at the FAW. And then they're working for the production companies. We've got 4 or 5 at Whisper. And then there's a few that might be at BBC. We've got a girl called Ali at Sky Sports and a girl called Kay who's at TNT Sports. But there's so many different types of broadcasting you can be working on now. We haven't even covered sports documentary. You know, that has just blown up in the last decade and doesn't seem like slowing down. You can't move on Netflix or Prime for a new behind the scenes, all or nothing, Drive to Survive. And they all want those skills as well. Storytellers who can shoot. And then I think this is why you're so good at this sort of stuff. It's harder to teach the students. It's building relationships quickly building trust with talent, being the person who's holding a camera in a changing room, but all the athletes and coaches can still be themselves. So yeah, that's a huge skill, to go into a room and put everyone at ease when you're holding a camera. And that's the one, yes, students who master that skill will get a lot of work in the documentary space.
Yeah, you've got to be able to inject yourself into a situation, but be the grey man sort of thing, kind of be a little bit of a wallpaper there, so they forget
Yeah,
you're there and they just do
yeah,
what they do. Because there's nothing worse than an all access documentary when everyone just goes, "There's a camera here, don't say anything."
yeah,
So yeah, you've got to put them at ease. But yeah, there's an amazing amount of opportunities, and there's so many grassroots clubs in Wales as well. Like I know of 2 or 3 grassroots football clubs in Newport that have got a student or a graduate doing
yeah,
a behind the scenes documentary for them.
yeah.
It's great for that club. It's great for that person. They get the skill set and they get the experience. The club get the visibility. So there's so many opportunities out there if you want to create sports content, if you just throw yourself into it.
Yeah, I think there's no excuse now. If you're 16, 18 to 25 and you want to get in sports production, you do need to be doing exactly like you said, down to your local club or the highest level club you can get to. It might be a semi-pro club. It might be one of the Welsh JD Cymru Premier clubs. You know, they haven't got big budgets. They haven't got much resources. They might only have one media manager, and that media manager might be busy with the social media stuff during a game. So they rarely will have a videographer. So yeah, if you can get yourself some camera skills, even if you're starting out using your phone, and get down and help those sports teams, local netball team, local hockey team, local basketball team. I don't really expect a student now to get to 21, 22 and not have that on their CV. That's how they're going to get jobs. Yes, they'd want their own podcast or their own YouTube channel, but we want to see they're out there developing those skills with the local sports teams who need the support.
Yeah, and it's a network industry as well, isn't it? There's rarely ever a job post, we're looking for someone to do this. More often than not, it's you say to someone, I need someone who does this, and they say, oh, you should speak to that person, or I'll introduce you to someone that can help you with that. So
Yeah.
it's a network industry. The more people you meet, the more things you do, the bigger your network grows, the faster your network grows, and the more opportunities come your way.
Yeah, everything leads to something, and it's just, and LinkedIn is another really good example. If they can be on there, if they can be active, they can be positive, showing what they're up to, getting in touch with people like yourself and seeing what opportunities are out there. It's in many ways, it's never been easier in sport, and I think the rest of TV in Wales is struggling a bit. There's not much daytime TV. Factual TV doesn't seem to have much money at the moment for commissions. Drama got a bit too expensive, whereas sport is just showing no signs of suffering because there's so much of it. There's all the men's sport, all the women's sport, all the para sports, age grade sports, semi-pro sports. Teams that maybe are frustrated they can't get on the BBC or S4C are now saying, right, we'll do it ourselves on YouTube. So there's amazing opportunity if you've got live stream skills. And again, those live stream skills, I think people wrongly think that live streaming's easy, that you just rock up and turn on. It's so difficult. You need people who understand the platform, who can ensure the connectivity is robust, who can, attach 3 or 4 cameras into a feed, can add graphics, can add commentary, can add replays. Live streaming is really technical, and we're teaching it now and taking it really seriously because we used to set everything up and let the students step in and just have a go at presenting and reporting and commentating. Now, Ado Raps, our lead technician, he wants to make sure they know how to set that live stream up. They can troubleshoot when it goes wrong, because it often goes wrong. You turn up at a venue and the IT is not as reliable as you thought it was going to be, or you haven't got a covered gantry position, you're not elevated, you haven't looked at your health and safety. So much goes into live streaming that we're really trying to put that at the forefront so the students leave us and actually it's transferable, because you might be doing a political conference one week, you might be doing Glastonbury the next week. It's all live streaming and understanding that sort of IP. So
Yeah, and I think that the biggest skill there is working under pressure, because when you're live and something goes wrong and you look around the room, if everyone's panicking, then you don't resolve the issue. You've got to go, right, okay, so that's happened. I need to check this, then this, then this. I need to find the fault. I need to fix it quickly. So you need to understand every part of that technical process to understand where that issue might be. There's nothing worse than live streaming and for some reason the audio's not coming through, or pictures kind of something wrong with it, or there's a delay. So whenever someone's having a conversation with someone else, you've got to go, right, okay, I can fix this, or otherwise it's a hellish hour.
And there's nothing worse than a shit live stream. It's sort of reputationally damaging. It looks bad at the other end for the end user to be watching a live stream where the commentary's poor, or the camera coverage is poor, or the camera's getting wet. So it's just, you want to get it right for the client. And yeah, there's a lot of bad live streaming out there. So we're trying slowly to sort of improve that offer. It's a big part of what we want to do on campus, is to be able to remote live stream. So we've seen the amazing stuff that's happening down at the Cymru Broadcast Centre at the Tramshed Tech, led by Whisper, and their remote coverage of the Paralympics. We want to offer that for the sport below that, for sort of semi-pro sport, for governing body sport, for schools finals. We want them to be able to come to us and say, Cardiff Met, can you host our final because you can stream it? Our students get experience, their sports gets coverage, our university gets a bit of exposure. So hopefully everyone wins. But yeah, that's where we want to be, really, where we can have really reliable live stream solutions for all sports, ideally on campus. But actually, once we're remote now, we've got 4 or 5 live view kits. There's no reason why we can't stream from Cardiff Arms Park and Sophia Gardens.
Absolutely, it sounds brilliant. Yeah, and like, I can't speak highly enough of some of the students and graduates that I've had from Cardiff Met. So if anyone's thinking about building a career in sports broadcast, I think it's definitely the place to go. So
yeah, give me a shout on LinkedIn if you're interested in the course. Have a look of undergrad. It would be sport media, which is a BSc, 3 years, and then postgrad is sport broadcast, which is an MSc for a year. And yeah, we're always happy to speak to potential recruits, give them a tour of campus, come and watch our students in action, or speak to our graduates. We've got about 100 out there in the industry now doing great things. I'm actually really jealous of lots of our graduates, because I see the trips and they're at the Champions League and they're all over the world. So it's still a great industry. There's still loads of travel. It's still fun. It's actually quite a young industry. You know, most of the people on the ground are in their 20s and 30s. So it's yeah, I couldn't recommend it as an industry choice any more highly. I've had so many trips out of it. So yeah, I think unless you can upskill yourself on your own in your teens and early 20s, then it is worth looking at a course like ours. But if you don't want to go to university, there's some great schemes and academies and things with Skill Set Cymru and Screen Alliance and all these different organizations that will help people who maybe university isn't for them to get into the broadcast industry. I think it's a good time for that, actually.
Yeah, and I think there's a sense of pride and jealousy when someone you've been mentoring or supporting or training gets the opportunity that you would love. I know a couple of years ago, one of the lads from University of Gloucestershire, I'd given him a couple of opportunities and he worked on a few things for me. And then he got headhunted by Copa 90 to go to the World Cup. Yeah. And he's like, I'd never heard of Copa 90. And I'm like, I've been watching Copa 90 for years. I want to go to the World Cup. I think, oh, that's really great for him. I wish I could have got that job.
Yeah. Copa 90 is interesting. I used to show the students Copa 90 and those BT Sport Unfiltered or No Filter. And yeah, we got a bunch of students that, you know, Charlie Phillips ended up making a documentary for Copa 90. So it's great. You show them things that will inspire them. We used to show those BT No Filter edits that were amazing. And now Kay Davis, who was on our course a few years ago, is making those and traveling around Europe on a Wednesday night. It was a good one, actually. There was a girl called Alexandra Richards who got a job with Sunset and Vine that I helped her get as a researcher in the office. And it was a few months later, she booked me for a freelance job, which is amazing. And now anyway, she's a reporter at BBC now, and you see her at press conferences and pitch side at the Wales women's football matches. So yeah, it is. I think you were saying it is. I didn't realize when I came into academia that would be the motivation. I thought, okay, it looks like a nice job, nice holidays, nice challenge, get my weekends back, a bit different to working in the broadcast industry every week. But actually the motivation is exactly as you say. It's seeing them go on to do the sort of jobs you'd love to have. And I've got quite a few now, because we've been doing it for 7 years, who have just surpassed anything I ever did in the industry. There's a girl called Sophie at Two Circles, and there's a girl called Rachel Jones, who used to work for you at Eat Sleep Media. She's a senior broadcast engineer for Matchroom Sports, and she's in Doha and Dubai every week putting on massive boxing streams. So yeah, it's amazing to see where they're going, and it's just a reminder that they're then opening the door as well for the next generation. So it was my contacts getting them all in. Now it's the graduates' contacts, and I have to ring them up and say, can you take a couple of placement students? So yeah, it keeps rolling on, really. It's brilliant.
So I've just realised now how you keep getting these bookings to do these documentaries and the Paris Olympics and all. You're getting all these students out there in the world, and then they're coming back and booking you to do jobs.
Absolutely. It's a real good lesson that not fall out with anyone, and all those relationships and networks you have, stay on good terms. I had a student the other day who wasn't getting paid by a freelance job, and that is annoying for freelancers and late payments, and I have every sympathy with him, but he was going to go public on LinkedIn and bury this company, and I thought, just don't do that. You don't want to burn your bridges. You need to chase up that payment, but it's not worth screwing up all your contacts or looking angry on LinkedIn. You want to put your positive best version in that space, and it is important that when you do meet someone, you follow up with a nice email, or you remember their name, or if they do a great program, you contact them on LinkedIn and say, I really enjoyed that program. It's that sort of polite persistence and keeping in touch with people that will actually, one day they'll get in and they need someone, and you'll be fresh in their mind because you've just sent an email, and they'll ring up and say, can you go and film a cricket match for us somewhere? And, there's your chance.
Exactly, yeah. And again, it's a network industry, isn't it? So if you've been
small.
Yeah, if you've been positive, you've been proactive, you've been a good person to work with, then someone else will recommend you somewhere, and then you never know where it takes you.
The guys that were runners with me, when I started at Sky, one runner was Simon Lazenby, who now presents Formula One. One runner was Alex Payne, who's got that sort of Good, the Bad and the Rugby podcast. Dave Jones, who presents Sky Sports Monday Night Football. We were all young, just starting out, and it's amazing to see where they go. Joe Worsley was doing Soccer AM, and he was young, about my age, and I just saw him at the Olympics. You'll see everyone again, and I love the idea that my students are going to bump into each other at Olympics and Football World Cups all around the world, because, you see the same people. It's not that big an industry.
Yeah, so there'll be Cardiff Met meetups or all the biggest events in global sport.
Totally. I get sent pictures of them on the touchline of a Champions League match. A couple of them are working for different clients, and nothing could make you prouder and more jealous.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Joe, for talking to me. We've got to wrap it up now. So do you want to just say again where people can find out about yourself and about Cardiff Met courses?
Yeah, Cardiff Met has got a master's course called Sport Broadcasting. You can look it up online, or you can look me up, Joe Towns, on LinkedIn. Give me a shout if you want more information. If you're 16, 17, thinking of university, then Steph Guerrero, who was a brilliant presenter, producer in his day at the BBC, is now running a fantastic undergrad course called Sport Media. And there's a real mix on that of marketing, media, events, socials. They've just actually finished designing an esports module. If that sounds attractive to you, then get in touch with Steph, or again, look on the Cardiff Met website and look for the Sport Media undergrad course.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Joe. And thank you for those at home for watching or listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and share this episode and subscribe to the channel for more content.